Good morning. I'm Nick Gage, the CEO and President of the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of our entire team, welcome to the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce's BizDev series of educational workshops. Our educational series is designed to inform and empower business owners and our broader community by exploring topics that matter today and for the future. And I am so pleased to introduce today's workshop and excited to announce that this episode marks the third and really the final session in our collaboration with the Santa Clara County Open Space Authority. Now, today you're going to hear from Aaron Herbert and Jennifer Perth. They're going to share their insights and preview a special community initiative called the Coyote Valley Discovery Days. This is a grand adventure that invites the community to engage in a season-long experience that celebrates our wildlife, deepens our understanding of sustainable agriculture, and outlines the vision for more than 1,600 acres of protected open space for all to enjoy. So, Jennifer and Aaron, you have the platform.
Great, thanks, Nick. And hi, all. Welcome. Jennifer Pest, Senior Open Space Planner with the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. I'm glad to be here today to talk about our upcoming Coyote Valley Discovery Days. I'll pass it over to Aaron.
Hey, I'm Aaron Bear. I'm the Natural Resources Manager here at the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority.
And let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, and we'll go ahead and get started here. So today I'll share a little bit of background about the Open Space Authority briefly, and then about Coyote Valley, where it is, why it's so important. Aaron will cover habitat and floodplain restoration alternatives that we're looking at, and then I'll talk about some of the public access regional trail concepts that make up these concept alternatives that we are excited to share with the public through the upcoming Coyote Valley Discovery Days this spring. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. So the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority, here's our mission, which is to conserve the natural environment, support agriculture, and connect people to nature by protecting open space, natural areas, and working farms and ranches for future generations. We're an independent special district, an open space district, so it's a public agency. We have 4 preserves that are currently open to the public, and we own and manage over 30,000 acres. These preserves are always free of entry to the public. And then we're funded through Measures Q and most recently Measure T. This is the Open Space Authority's jurisdiction that you see in the map on the screen. It covers most of Santa Clara County. We include the communities of Campbell, Milpitas, Morgan Hill, San Jose, Santa Clara, and then, of course, large swaths of unincorporated Santa Clara County. So jumping into the Coyote Valley Conservation Areas Master Plan, I'll refer to it as CV Camp, the acronym for short. But Coyote Valley is located between Morgan Hill and San Jose. So it's that open stretch of land that you see if you're on 101 driving between the two cities. And what you see here, we're just looking at 101, Highway 101 in the foreground. Behind that is going to be Monterey Road and the Union Pacific Rail line, which carries Amtrak, Caltrain, and in the future, high-speed rail. Behind that, Santa Teresa Boulevard. And then in the background, there is McKean-Uvis Road. And then you have a Bailey Avenue going east-west through the project area. The properties that make up the Coyote Valley conservation areas are shown in yellow on the map, and additional surrounding open space is protected open space is shown in green. This, with the addition of the property here, which was just protected in January, this area comprises about 1,600 acres of protected open space. The Open Space Authority is planning for this property through CV Camp in close partnership with our partners, the City of San Jose and Peninsula Open Space Trust, or POST. So this is a map showing that same area. but its historic ecology. So what it might have looked like, or what it would have looked like before European colonization. So you see at the right side of the screen, there's a large, this would have been like 1,000-acre freshwater marsh leading into wet meadow. So this would be an area, this is the lowest point in the valley and where it would have captured kind of runoff from the surrounding hillsides to create this kind of wetland mosaic. And then going out from there, oak woodlands and oak savanna. So this is something that we're using as inspiration for the future restoration of this 1,600 acres in Coyote Valley. We can't go exactly back to this ecology, but it's something that we can use as a guidepost going forward. The change from what you saw in the historic ecology to today, the majority of that took place around 1916, and it was actually very well documented. So you're seeing the photo on the top, the black and white photo, and on the bottom, these are taken from the same vantage point, nearly 100 years apart. What you're looking at on the top, this is near the crest where Santa Teresa Boulevard, the crest of the hill looking south toward Morgan Hill, over Coyote Valley and over the Laguna Seca. So in the top frame would be tule reeds up over your head, this freshwater marsh. And then in the photos in the center, you see the reclamation of this area for agriculture using clamshell diggers and burning tule reeds. And the goal was to get water off of the property, off of the land as quickly and efficiently as possible so it could be used for farming. So additionally, as part of this work, the Fisher Creek man-made channel was created. And that drains to Coyote Creek, and Fisher Creek will come up again throughout the presentation. But as you can see in the bottom photo, Laguna Seca persists today, providing ecological habitat benefits, groundwater recharge, and flood benefits, downstream flood benefits. By the 1940s, Coyote Valley was a rich agricultural area. You can see the orchards, in the photos on the left. And then amazingly, for valley floor property in the Bay Area, Coyote Valley remains somewhat unchanged today. We have, of course, the IBM campus, and then you may notice a dam that was installed in Laguna Seca around 2007, 2008 in anticipation of future development in the area. This would have turned the property into a retention kind of holding basin for surrounding development. But other than that, it's again a landscape that is still providing a lot of benefits. The Open Space Authority in 2017 released this report, the Coyote Valley Landscape Linkage. Something that we know now today, Coyote Valley is one of those benefits that it's providing is a wildlife linkage or wildlife corridor between the Santa Cruz Mountains to the west and the Diablo Range to the east. So this is connecting over 1 million acres of habitat on either side. So that map that you're seeing, the green is connected open space that allows animals to move through the landscape. And why that's important is without Coyote Valley, the Santa Cruz Mountains would be at risk of becoming an ecological island. And so that means that there are things like genetic isolation impacting the species that live there, including it's beginning to show up today, for example, in mountain lions that have a kink in their tail. So it's one of the symptoms of that. And so again, Coyote Valley is just this really unique opportunity to maintain that landscape linkage. So there are additionally other benefits in Coyote Valley that really drive the goals of the of CV Camp. And so those are listed here on the slide. We have and they're organized into the way that our teams, we have two teams are approaching CV Camp, the CV Camp project. And on the right-hand side, you have that wildlife connectivity and those water resources, climate adaptation. And on the left-hand side, the team tackling things like the public access, interpretation, and our cultural heritage, engaging the community, and then also local economy. We know that access to nature has an economic benefit. These teams come together around the topics of local agriculture and grazing in Coyote Valley, and then transportation, street design, and road ecology. And then that all comes together in this holistic vision for Coyote Valley. So where we've been, we in 2023 completed a number of site assessments and studies to further, complete our understanding of the existing conditions in Coyote Valley. We shared out that information in 2024, including in San Jose and Morgan Hill, and hearing from the public which of these goals, are really resonating with people. We completed an opportunities and constraints analysis last year, and then we're at this really exciting milestone in the project. Now we've created those conceptual alternatives for the plan. And happy to share those with you all today and with the public this spring. So again, this is just showing a timeline of the project. We're here in early 2026 with those conceptual plan alternatives. Later in the year, we'll be taking those concepts and developing a preferred concept plan. That'll form the basis of the draft and final master plan that then we'd complete environmental review on later in 2027. And I'll pass it over to Erin now to talk about the habitat and floodplain restoration alternatives.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. As she mentioned, we're kind of at this part of the project where we've, studied the landscape very extensively, and we're kind of trying to figure out, what exactly do we want to do out there? And right now we have a couple of alternatives for how we want to restore this landscape and create that landscape linkage that Jennifer was showing that kind of can really only happen in this, very narrow space between north of Morgan Hill and south of San Jose, right? That's what Coyote Valley is all about. So right now we're thinking about all of these different alternatives. If you know the landscape today, this is kind of what it looks like. If you drive through here, it's kind of bisected by Santa Teresa or Hale as you're heading north. Some of you might commute in that general direction. But as you can see, a lot of that land is kind of grassland, or we've got some hay fields, and then kind of closer towards Palm Avenue, where you can access Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve. Going to have this more agricultural area in the sense of row crop production. The other thing I would point out in this figure is just how narrow some of the like kind of habitat areas are. Specifically, you can kind of squint and see this dark green line. That's kind of our riparian area along Fisher Creek that Jennifer described, which was again sort of built as a ditch really in 1916. And so it doesn't quite work like a lot of creeks do. It's one of the watersheds that kind of flows north through Morgan Hill. And kind of into Coyote Valley, and then it eventually reaches kind of Laguna Seca and Coyote Creek. So it's a pretty large watershed, but it's extremely flat. So you might have noticed in that historic ecology figure that Jennifer was showing, it's really kind of a flat landscape where water would sort of come into it and just kind of sit there. To a large extent, farming has never really been that successful, kind of in that light green part of this figure. And that's really because it's just too dang wet. Kind of east of Santa Teresa, generally speaking, there's a much longer history of agriculture and kind of what we might think of as like the Valley of Heart's Delight. So that's kind of what the landscape looks like today. It's obviously almost all undeveloped except for a few areas. So it's a really beautiful place to sort of drive through if you haven't done so. Next slide. But as Jennifer sort of showed in that bigger picture about, how do we get wildlife between the Santa Cruz Mountains and the Diablo Range? It all kind of comes together in this very narrow area, relatively speaking, for wildlife. And what you kind of see in yellow in this figure is like the core areas that we think as kind of part of this wildlife linkage, right? If you get kind of south of Bailey or southeast of Bailey and Santa Teresa, you can see there's a lot of agriculture. There's some rural residential development. It's not really open space and habitat, right? But kind of in yellow, you have this really relatively undeveloped landscape with a few kind of bits of development. You've got IBM, you've got that weird little AT&T switch building, you've got the Metcalf Energy Center, you've got the Hamlet of Coyote, you have all these bits of development kind of sprinkled through Coyote Valley. And if you're a bobcat, say, and you're trying to move through this landscape, you really want to be avoiding people and cars and noises and dogs and all those things that we kind of just have as part of our daily life. And what the science really shows is that from a wildlife linkage perspective, this kind of ideal minimum width of this kind of undisturbed landscape, as it were, is about 1.25 miles, and a little scale bar on there. And as you can see, we sort of barely fit that sort of requirement. So, in certain areas, like say you're moving between IBM and Santa Teresa and Bailey, it's kind of this narrow kind of pinch point, which is what we've kind of shown in those red dashed lines where, wildlife are really constrained and their movement behaviors in these areas are going to be different because of that development. So I think this is the intent of this figure is really just to show, even though there's amazing conservation work done here, our landscape is about 1,600 acres. And then if you kind of zoom out, it's maybe 15,000 acres of kind of habitat in this linkage zone. From a wildlife's perspective, they need as much as they can get, right? I mean, the more the merrier if you're wildlife trying to move between these two ranges. And I'll note that, our partners at the Peninsula Open Space Trust are working on studies to create wildlife undercrossings, particularly on Monterey Road. You might have seen a story in the news about their partnership with Valley Transportation Authority, VTA, and they're looking at creating wildlife undercrossings on Monterey Road, which is a big barrier, as you can imagine, to wildlife. If you've driven on that road, there's a concrete median that's about 4 feet high, and it has some sort of metal chain link kind of stuff on top of it. And a lot of roadkill happened on Monterey Road, unfortunately. So, creating wildlife connectivity through Monterey Road, and they are also working on ways of improving Highway 101, which fortunately has a few more bridges and overcrossings already, as well as many culverts, but is obviously also a barrier to wildlife in certain locations. So, our project is complementary to these sort of wildlife crossing projects that are planned for Monterey Road and 101, and is really like the habitat that animals would be moving through. So, hopefully, this picture depicts kind of like how constrained from the wildlife's perspective this landscape is. And at the same time, we want to create a lot of opportunities for public access and agriculture that Jen will show you a little bit later. Next slide. So to that end, we've kind of created this zonal diagram, which really looks at, what do we broadly speaking try to accomplish in each of these areas? And in green is that habitat focus zone. It's part of that landscape linkage that I was describing. And you can see that's about, I don't know, 70% of the project area is really where we're hoping to create the conditions that allow wildlife to move in and out of this landscape. Excuse me. In yellow, is areas that we really think are very suitable for ongoing agricultural activities or public access, right? These are areas that are generally closer to roads already where, you kind of just have that disturbance. So if you're a mountain lion or a bobcat, you're probably not going near Santa Teresa anyway, ideally. So kind of, co-locating some of those more intensive human uses with agriculture and public access allows the wildlife areas to be, relatively free of people as much as we can make that. And then there's kind of these zones in between them, which we just called the transition zone, which is kind of this sort of buffering area between the two. So, all in all, I hope you get a sense from this figure that what we're trying to do is block and chunk the landscape into, what are our priorities in each space, and to figure out how to reach those objectives that Jen was describing earlier. Next slide. So right now we're kind of in this, you know, conceptual phase where we're really trying to dream about what's possible, what makes the most sense on this landscape, and we've kind of come up with these three alternatives. There's kind of the Goldilocks approach from what we're calling a limited grading, and that's, grading is just sort of moving dirt around, and it tends to be the main driver of cost for these types of projects, to the very extensive grading option, which means a lot more earth movement, a lot more cost, all of that. So these three alternatives, which you can, I think, find on our website if you really want to kind of get in the weeds a little bit about this or that. All of them really attempt to, I would say, do two big things principally. Create the conditions for that wildlife movement I was describing, as well as restoring and improving some of the habitat that comes from Fisher Creek in Laguna Seca. Jen showed you that photo of what Laguna Seca used to look like, right? It was a really rich habitat for a variety of species. And it's not like that today, as you probably saw in that photo, but with some grading, with some kind of replumbing of this landscape, we hope to put a lot more water in there. One of the things I'll mention is that this landscape is part of the Coyote Creek watershed. And some folks may recall that in 2017, there were some very large storm events. I think it was like about a 20-year storm event that caused tens of millions of dollars of damage in downtown San Jose, right, where people have built structures very, very close to the creek. So one of our goals is like, well, this landscape, because it's undeveloped for the most part, has a lot of potential to hold and store some of that water, both for the benefit of wildlife as well as reducing downstream flooding. Another goal I'll mention that folks are probably aware of is Coyote Valley is also like, it's almost like a big water tank for Santa Clara County in general. And what I mean by that is all the water that is stored underground in our aquifer is part of how Valley Water manages this system in order to create kind of more sustainable water. So the more water we can keep on the landscape and actually percolate down into that aquifer, rather than shooting it down and having it flood different areas in San Jose. Obviously, that's kind of a win-win from a water perspective. So a lot of benefits to the project. Next slide. So this is the limited grading option. We're kind of zooming into south of Bailey, just to give you a little closer view of those pictures. And in this version, essentially, we have that sort of striped green on the southeast, and that's that agriculture and public access zone. And Jen will give you some more details there. This option really is kind of like, how do we make the most with a limited budget to improve all the habitat? So what you see is a lot of re-oaking to create oak savannas on the sort of the west side. That's kind of that brown dotted stuff. And then how do we maybe turn our Fisher Creek, our agricultural ditch, into something that's a little more natural, a little more like an actual creek system? So some expanding these riparian corridors, building little wetlands where we can, but kind of a more surgical, kind of targeted approach that also creates a lot of benefit too. Next slide. This is on the other side of the Goldilocks spectrum, this is the most extensive sort of grading option. And in this version, the big difference between what we just showed you is that it contemplates moving Fisher Creek, which again is a ditch, to what is actually the low point in the valley. If you look at flood records, say from 2017, or you look at computer models, the water kind of wants to go to the west side of the valley, which is actually kind of where the low spot in the valley is. So this essentially creates a whole new Fisher Creek on the west side and kind of bends like a, kind of bows in that general direction. And the main benefit of this, I would say, is that it allows us to, flood some of the surrounding landscape that's further from Santa Teresa, right? So sort of deconflicting those two uses. And the other sort of big benefit, I would say, is just by having a bigger, more natural riparian area on the west side of the valley. Um, Back in 2017, Jen mentioned we published a report about this landscape linkage in Coyote Valley. And one of the big cool findings in that really came from bobcat collar data, where bobcats with GPS collars sort of, lived their lives, and we got all that data. And one of the things you see very clearly in Coyote Valley is that bobcats in particular love staying by the creek and love staying by the cover, which makes sense. They don't want to be out in the open. They're predators. They're using the element of surprise. And so the nice thing about this version is by having Fisher Creek and all that riparian habitat over on the west side of the valley, they may be more inclined to move through this space a little further from Santa Teresa, where you have those sort of high traffic volumes, right? So one of the benefits is just this might be a slightly better wildlife corridor in this area. Next slide. So going north here to Laguna Seca, this is the limited grading option, right? Kind of the more surgical approach. And really what you see in this figure is that kind of more targeted grading of Laguna Seca to get it back to something much more akin to what we saw in that photo. In 2006, there was a dam built through Laguna Seca. That was kind of a precursor to a lot of development that thankfully never happened in Coyote Valley. But we still have this dam that kind of divides historic Laguna Seca into these two big chunks of land. In this version, which again is sort of the more cost-conscious version of the project, we don't modify that dam because it's an expensive thing to do, and it has some flood control functions that we need to offset or improve. So in this version, we're really just improving a lot of the habitat in its place. One of the big changes that's true for all three versions is we imagine moving Fisher Creek in this section to the west of the property in South Laguna Seca. Currently, it runs in that dashed blue line right next to Santa Teresa, and that creates flooding, which is an issue for motorists. It also is kind of like a big ditch that actually wildlife have trouble crossing. And so by moving the creek west, one, we reduce flooding on Santa Teresa, which is important. And two, we actually make the property more accessible for wildlife, which is, again, sort of the primary goal of the project from a habitat standpoint. Next slide. So this is the most extensive version. So we've sort of skipped the Goldilocks middle one, which you can check out online if you're interested. But in this one, we make substantial modifications to the dam. We really reconnect North and South Laguna Seca, as we call it, by breaching the dam and kind of having water move between these two places. We create a much more extensive seasonal wetland. Today, this heat wave that we're currently in. Um, when we get a lot of water in Laguna Seca, you see literally thousands of migratory birds descend on this area. It is the biggest freshwater wetland in the county. And it's, if you're a bird and you're flying, say, from the south of San Francisco Bay, headed south, you see this major water feature and you come down, right, as part of the Pacific Flyway. So really what we see is that when there's water, migratory birds and waterfowl in particular just really love this landscape. So this version of the project really builds on that, takes advantage of the water that we have. It really uses water from Fisher Creek to fill up Laguna Seca seasonally and create that beautiful sort of mosaic of wetland habitats in this area. There's a lot of other kind of details here that we can get into, but I think I'll leave it there for now. And like I said, if you're interested in more, you can contact me or go on our website and kind of learn a little bit more, including some of seeing the kind of middle option that I didn't show here just for the sake of time. So. Next slide. I think it's back to you, Jen. Maybe it got stuck. Or maybe Jen is stuck.
It froze for me for a second, so
Oh,
Jen might
oh,
be. I'm back
oh,
now.
Jen's back. Great.
Okay, it looks like Jen's back too.
Yeah, yeah. Before the call, Nick was mentioning that there's been some interest in our agricultural webinar that we put on recently, which is fabulous. I also have the privilege of overseeing our ag program. And one of the things that's not as well depicted in those other slides, because we're, talking about habitat and water, is kind of like, how does ag fit into this? So this slide actually does a really good job of, in a lot of that wildlife corridor area. We really hope to have sort of seasonally timed what we call conservation grazing. For a lot of ranchers, they keep their cattle in the hills for a lot of the year, and then maybe more typically in the summer, they'll come down into the valley and use these properties. So you can kind of see that in the dark green, and we're still trying to figure out how to make that most compatible with our wildlife corridor goals. But cattle are an essential tool to managing grasslands. That's very well established in sort of conservation science at this point. So the green area is kind of those areas where you might see cattle and kind of local beef production. And then in the light blue, these are all the areas that we've identified as being really suitable for kind of row crop agriculture, as you might call it. Some of you are probably familiar with the Spina pumpkin patch. That's that kind of northeast block, seasonally, obviously super, super popular. But Jen will show you some really exciting things that we're hoping to do elsewhere in the project area to really activate this landscape. From an agricultural perspective. One thing I'll say real briefly about that is just that because this landscape was under threat of development, I would say from about 1980 all the way through, I don't know, 2020, you could argue that it's still ongoing. The uses that those sort of development speculators who largely owned many of these properties very interested in short-term agriculture because they wanted to sell the property next, right? It kind of makes sense. They didn't want to get tied down with a long-term business. And so one of the things I think you see a little bit in Coyote Valley is there's a lot more potential for, more profitable, higher intensity, more publicly beneficial agriculture that we hope to see in the project area in the future. Off to you, Jen. Thanks.
Great. We'll take it from here. Thanks, Aaron. All right, so back to focusing now on the public access portion of the project. I'll talk about regional trails and connections, and then followed by some of the specific public access destinations that we're looking at. So to get oriented here, the map that you see on the screen is showing how Coyote Valley is important for the movement of not only wildlife, but also people for recreational purposes. So people want to connect between the two mountain ranges through Coyote Valley as well. So we have a number of existing parks and open spaces surrounding the planning area. I'll start down on the bottom center of the screen, the Open Space Authority's existing Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve. We have about 4 mile trail there. A very popular preserve. If you haven't been, it's highly recommended. There is shade, some shade, so it's a good spot. It can be a good spot in the summer. Up in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, we have Mayan Oyakma Coyote Ridge Open Space Preserve. Just below that, Coyote Creek Parkway, operated by Santa Clara County Parks, connects San Jose and Morgan Hill. And then on the upper left-hand side of the screen, Santa Teresa County Park. So these are existing trails and public access throughout in the surrounding area. And then the dashed orange lines are showing where the areas where we'll be planning for additional trails. So this area, these routes have been identified in the Santa Clara County Countywide Trails Master Plan as routes for regional trails. And then the connecting from Coyote Creek Parkway in the east up to Santa Teresa County Park in the north is also identified as a route of the Bay Area Ridge Trail. If you're not familiar, that will be a 500+ mile trail that circumnavigates San Francisco Bay via trail. Yeah, so coming through Coyote Valley in this location. So we'll be looking at the specific trail alignments as part of this project. You see the orange dots are some of those existing public access destinations, and then some of the destinations that will be new that we'll be planning through CV Camp. There's a dot there on Spina Farms, the pumpkin patch in the center of the screen. And then the green dashed line is showing opportunities for improved bike infrastructure. So along Santa Teresa Boulevard and Bailey, and then Palm Avenue to the south. And then something that's really unique about this area as well is the fact that there are a number of VTA Route 68 bus stops. So this is a bus service from San Jose to Gilroy, runs every 15 minutes through the project area, and it's just a really unique feature for this type of parks and open space, which usually are in the hills and much more auto dependent. So something that we're also really excited about. Okay, just zooming into Mid-Coyote Valley, this is an area where there are a couple alternatives that we could be looking at. And that has to do with the alignment of the trail in proximity to Fisher Creek. Moving the trail closer to Santa Teresa Boulevard would require the acquisitions of agricultural inholdings. But you can see also, just zooming in, the opportunity to connect Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve over to Santa Teresa Boulevard for some agricultural gateway improvements that are being planned there that I'll talk further about. And then we just have these photos showing some of the existing views that you get when you're kind of in that interior of the property. So the beautiful surrounding grasslands with the hills in the distance, and then some unique habitat types that are existing now and that will be expanded upon through restoration. So really unique experiences that you'll get along this trail. So now I'll share the public access destination concepts. So these are located in throughout, from north to south in the planning area across 4 locations. For each of these sites, we're looking at 3 alternatives. Those alternatives range from different locations within the site, or a suite of amenities from light, medium to high amenity options. We'll be seeking feedback on these alternatives through this spring as part of Coyote Valley Discovery Days. And then essentially, we'll be picking from these alternatives. It'll be like a menu of options that come together to form, the preferred concept. So we have some of the renderings to show these alternatives. We have visualizations and aerial diagrams that I'll be showing today. The aerial diagram is going to drop you into the space. And then we have these more plan views that begin to bring things, bring things into AutoCAD and get a little more specific. Those will be, again, available online if you'd like to dig into the details a little more. So we'll begin up at the top with Laguna Seca. This is what it looks like today. You've seen a number of the views from this vantage point. This is looking south toward Morgan Hill. And this is what it could look like in the future. So you'd be looking out over this restored landscape. This is something that's consistent across the 3 alternatives. Looking out over this restored landscape, there's opportunities for interpretation and artistic renderings, seating and observation deck, or kind of a viewing platform, maybe a wildlife viewing area. And for these three alternatives, the differentiation for them is more location than a suite of amenities. So beginning in the south, over that existing dam, there's an opportunity to develop an overlook there. Off of, you come a little further north, we can use an existing berm that gives you a nice vantage point over Laguna Seca, or a little more into the interior over an existing hill to again get those great views. And being all three of these options would come off of that public access spine, the regional trail, and continue north to Santa Teresa County Park. But here we're aware of the impact of human presence on this, on the sensitive habitat type of the marsh. So keeping the location of those of the three alternatives will be top of mind. And then there is an opportunity on existing roadways through the property for guided and docent access. All right, so moving to the Hillview Hub. This is a property. What's special and unique about this property is this hill that rises up 100 feet over the landscape. There's an existing road cut that takes you to the top of the hill and provides these kind of expansive, incredible 360-degree views of Coyote Valley. This is what it looks like today from the top of that hill, looking south again toward Morgan Hill. And this is what it could look like, again, over a restored landscape. You see the multi-use regional trail going north-south, Santa Teresa Boulevard, and then functioning active agricultural fields in the distance. At the top of the hill, there could be restored native landscaping. And again, this seeding and interpretation and opportunity for nature play. So these three alternatives, from light amenity options to high amenity options, they share a staging area, regional trail connections, that trail that I mentioned up to the top of the hill, and connections to the VTA Route 68 bus stop, and then as well as an outdoor classroom and picnic area. In the medium amenity option, we add restoration learning gardens. So this is an opportunity as you're on the trail to get tactile with some of those plants that are creating the restoration on landscape. And then we move the staging area a little further up Santa Teresa, as well as the outdoor classroom. In the high amenity option, we introduce a native plant nursery. So it's going to take a lot of plants to make those restoration visions that Aaron shared come to life. So one way that we can do that efficiently is to bring that in-house, so to speak, and develop a native plant nursery. And the Hillview Hub is one site where we're looking at doing that. Moving on to the Coyote Valley Field Station. So this is going to be adjacent to our existing Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve. And this is what it looks like today, a flat field. This is looking north. And this is what it could look like. So these people here are seated on what could be a welcome and education center. You see nature play on the logs in the background, kind of native plant pollinator gardens, and those regional trail connections. The thing that these three alternatives have in common is this welcome and education center. In this light scenario, that might be something more like an open air shade structure. All three have parking, and then this native pollinator garden with nature play. In the medium amenity option, a little bit more built up welcome and education center, we bring the option to introduce a native plant nursery at this site. And then in the high amenity option, that native plant nursery gets moved back to create space for an agricultural demonstration area. This is where you can get up close and personal with farming, and then all of these use areas would be connected by local trails. The Welcome and Education Center might get more built up, enclosed, and have restrooms, offices, supply storage areas for interpretation and education staff, and all connecting to the existing Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve. The fourth area, the Agricultural Gateway, this is located at Palm and Santa Teresa Boulevard. This is views today. and what it could look like if you were at a farm stand in the area. So we have in the light amenity option all of the infrastructures proposed on the east side of Santa Teresa Boulevard. This would look like a farmer serving hub, things like a wash and pack station, greenhouse, a place for equipment storage and supplies on an existing building pad, and then a farm stand and parking area, again on the east side of Santa Teresa Boulevard. In the medium option, we move the farm stand over to the west side of Santa Teresa, still with the parking area, and introduce a shade structure, kind of outdoor gathering space. In the high amenity option, on the farmer serving hub, there is an opportunity for farm manager, farm tenant housing. And then on the west side, the kind of visitor serving area gets an educational barn. So this is an area where farmers could provide education to the public in this kind of authentic setting and make use of the barn for their farming purposes. So that concludes the concept alternatives. We are, like I said, in the process of conducting stakeholder and community outreach. We're continuing to work on restoration modeling to again understand the implications of those restoration scenarios and inform decision making that Erin talked about. And then later this year, we'll be continuing to refine street design for connecting those public access destinations and also for road ecology or the safe movement of wildlife through the planning area. We'll begin looking at permitting and our phasing strategy. So we won't build this all out at once. This is something that will, be implemented over time. And again, developing that preferred concept plan. So taking the bits and pieces that we like of these, that we're hearing, the support for and putting into the preferred concept development. And for example, we wouldn't have a native plant nursery on the Hillview Hub as well as at the Coyote Valley Field Station. So making some of those decisions and trade-offs. Same with the Welcome and Education Center and the Educational Barn. It's kind of making those choices about what moves forward. And then looking into next year, environmental review and finalizing the master plan. So again, like I mentioned, the survey for Coyote Valley Discovery Days is kicking off this Friday. You can take a photo of the QR code. That'll take you to a landing page right now. Surveys will be uploaded on Friday. And we'll be, again, taking this out to the community, looking forward to hearing from you all. And what this is going to look like is between March and early May, going out into San Jose and Morgan Hill, hearing from the residents in Coyote Valley. We have kind of a fun, almost museum style exhibit where we'll be sharing and displaying this information and the concept alternatives to get people kind of learning about and excited about the plans for Coyote Valley. All right, and I'll pause it there.
Okay, thank you very much, both Jennifer and Erin, for sharing all of that information. It was very interesting, and I'm glad to now know all of that. Well, we will open it up for questions, but I have one while we're here. So I know you said that you're in the sort of funding phase, but is there a sort of order of execution in the different projects that you've talked about? I know you've talked about like lookout points, but I assume those will take longer than some of the other things you're looking at doing. So what I'm really getting at is when do you predict new trail options would be available to the public? Because as people in Morgan Hill love the trails, they have spent a lot of time out on them. So I'm sure they would be excited to hear about new routes that they could take. So what's the timeline on that project specifically?
Yeah, I think we don't have a maybe specific timeline for construction exactly or for opening, but we do hope to, as part of this, permitting and phasing, we do want to develop beginning construction drawings so that we are shovel ready, once that master plan is finalized. And so once in 2028, once that happens, getting, like you said, working between now and then to getting funding aligned so that once the plan is finalized, we can, we will be shovel ready to get underway. And the what I will say is of the public access destinations, the Hillview Hub, I think is one that we know. There is, like I said, there's already that almost built-in trail to the top of the hill. We are providing, public access there through events, including an event on April 10th. So you can come out and check out the property, but it is ripe for bringing people out to the property. So we don't want to delay, finding ways where we can get people out as soon as possible. And again, I think that is one site that will, move to the, we do anticipate being one of the higher priority areas again to be able to get people out to the site as quickly as possible.
Cool. Thank you very much. Then just additionally, for the places that are already accessible to the public, that are already open, would you have any sort of hot tips on like where people should be going right now in terms of, I know that the wildflowers are going crazy and the days are only getting warmer. So do you have any tips of where people should be spending their time if they can't make it to one of your Discovery Day activities?
Yeah, absolutely. Great point on the wildflowers. I hear that it is now is the time. So you see on the screen the incredible display of poppies at Laguna Seca. So our Mayana Yakima Coyote Ridge Open Space Preserve, we have a 5-mile loop there. Go on our website, get your butterfly pass. We have the rare endangered bay checker spot butterfly is found there, and it lives on some of the wildflower host plants at that preserve. Just stunning displays of wildflowers there, and it's a good one to go early spring before it gets too hot. And then, like I said, as the season kind of moves along, maybe you transition to Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve, or better yet, Rancho Cañada del Oro Open Space Preserve, which is just off McKean.
Awesome. Okay, good. See, I wanted to get the tips from the experts, so thank you.
Yeah.
Nick, did you have any questions before I sign off?
You're on mute, Nick.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, you think I would learn by now, but taking myself off mute. I just wanted to thank Aaron and Jennifer for t taking time with us today and your teammates. It's been a wonderful series of 3 events that we've had a chance to help share and disseminate the information. I've learned so much in a short amount of time, and I have to say, my family takes advantage of all your open trails, so we're so excited to see the continued expansion. I also have to comment, developing a strategic plan takes time, energy, discipline, and patience to actually push this forward to get it to the finish line. And I always learn something through these seminars, but I was really excited to see all of the VTA connection points along those projected opportunities in the future, because it just opens up access to all individuals in Morgan Hill based on what they may have going in their life to be able still to enjoy the outdoors. And that's just a wonderful, I think, comment on how strong strategic planning takes a role in looking at where our future generations can come and enjoy the opportunity. So thank you all for what you do. It's an incredible amount of work. It comes from a deep passion for everyone that we've had on the panel here. And it's clear every time that you guys have a chance to speak, and it's deeply appreciated from the Chamber of Commerce.
Thanks for that, Nick. And thanks for mentioning the bus stops. Yeah, we've brought VTA out on site visits, and we've got the thumbs up to make improvements to those bus shelters. Right now, they're kind of, the bench and the, kind of sad little signpost. So,
Right.
integrating those into the planning and design as well. We're excited to incorporate all that.
Job well done.
Thank you.
Yes, I was also very excited to hear about the VTA access. I love going into the open spaces, but it is sort of you have to plan, hope for parking, and drive all the way out there. But if you can just jump on the bus and not only go to one of the trails, but then go from that trail to a different trail if you wanted to, that's just
Yep.
so nice. So
Beautiful.
really cool that you guys are upping accessibility for these open spaces because they're beautiful and I'm wanting more and more people to go enjoy them and but stay on the trails.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so thank you very much, both Jennifer and Aaron, for joining us today. This, of course, is recorded, so it will go up on the Chamber of Commerce's YouTube channel by tomorrow, and then we will share it with our social medias. But definitely plan on being a part of the Open Space Authority's Discovery Days. Let your voice be heard. Let them know the things that you're interested in seeing development on, because they're in the planning stages. So uh, make your voice heard and take part in the development of these open spaces that are our home. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all so
Great.
much. Take
Take
care.
care.
Bye.
Bye.